I'm pleased to welcome all of you to our 2021 member meeting. Over the past 16 months, our community here in the city of Austin and around the country has had to overcome the tremendous challenges of balancing work and life remotely while staying safe through this pandemic. At COAERS, we've remained steadfast in our commitment to serving members, fulfilling our mission to provide reliable retirement benefits while successfully adapting to carry out business operations in the virtual environment. This year, we're excited to bring the annual member meeting as a virtual event once again to ensure that our members could stay engaged with the ongoing work COAERS is doing on behalf of the membership. So we thank you for joining this special live broadcast on Facebook. This annual event is an opportunity for all COAERS members to learn about important organizational updates. During our program today, you'll hear from members of the COAERS executive team, as well as the COAERS Board of Trustees, as we discuss the financial health of the retirement system, the investment program, and share updates about COAERS operations and initiatives. And after the discussion, we will answer questions that were submitted by you, our COAERS members, ahead of tonight's live event. Anyone who's tuned in to watch on Facebook can also enter their question in the comments section of the live video. And the COAERS staff will do their best to relay the questions from the audience back to the panel during the broadcast. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce you to the members of the COAERS Board of Trustees who are here tonight. Trustees, if you'd please turn on your videos at this time. The COAERS Board of Trustees is an 11-member governing body that provides oversight and sets policy for the organization. It is composed of 4 elected active City of Austin employees, 2 elected retired employees, 1 city manager designee, 1 city manager member, 2 city council appointed citizens, and 1 board appointed citizen. The trustees joining us today are Michael Benson, who's a retiree elected member and vice chair of the board, City Council member Leslie Poole, Diana Thomas, city manager designee, Amy Hunter, active elected member from the Development Services Department, Yu Zhao Liu, active elected member from Public Works, Brad Sinclair from the active elected member from the Financial Services Department, Anthony B. Ross Sr., retiree elected member, Stephanie Beach, council appointed citizen. Stephanie's not attending tonight. Frank Merriman, council appointed citizen, and Randy Spencer, board appointed citizen. Thank you, trustees. So our discussion tonight will center on the retirement system's defined benefit plan funding and sustainability, the investment program, and updates about COAERS operations and initiatives. Here to lead the discussion is COAERS Executive Director, Chris Hanson, Deputy Executive Director, Russell Nash, and COAERS Interim Chief Investment Officer, David Stafford. Chris, can you tell our members what's been happening lately at COAERS?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And before I get into my presentation, I wanted to take a brief minute to just thank all of you, our membership, for your service to the City of Austin, and note that it's an honor to work at COAERS on your behalf. So my presentation starting off, I'm going to do an update of COAERS funded status and the work we have on plan sustainability. To begin, I wanted to do an update on the most recent actuarial evaluation that COAERS received as of December 31st, 2020. That valuation was presented to the board in the spring of this year and contained some key information that I wanted to convey to our membership. First, COAERS current funded ratio of assets to liabilities is currently 65.3%. This represents an increase of approximately 2% from the last valuation in 2019. Additionally, the amortization period for COAERS unfunded liabilities currently sits at 32 years. This represents a reduction from the prior amortization period of 40 years. This overall represents a funding improvement for the system. And there are two key factors that have led to this funding improvement. The first has been strong investment performance at the system over the last couple of years. And then most recently, the City of Austin has increased its contributions to COAERS by 1% of pay. That had a significant impact on reducing the amortization period, and we're very grateful for the continued support from our plan sponsor. Currently, the system has approximately $130 million in deferred investment gains, and this is a good position to be in. We prefer to have deferred gains than deferred losses, and those will be factored into future valuations over the next 4 years. Currently, though, our amortization period of 32 years extends beyond the board's adopted funding policy of 25 years, with a target of full funding for the December 31st, 2045 actuarial valuation. Additionally, and as of significant importance, obviously, to our retired members, the COLA requirements that are within that funding policy currently sit and have sat at for a while an 80% funded ratio and an amortization period of 20 years. And I will answer some questions about where we stand in regards to the COLA later in the presentation. Moving on to my next slide, I wanted to show our membership the funding trajectory that COAERS currently sits on. And what you can see and take from this slide is that over the next 10 to 20 years, you can see that the funding progress, while looking positive, the slope is not as steep as it is as we move further out in time. What that means is to go from 65% funding to approximately 80% funding, it's projected to take about 20 years. We are then projected to go from 80% funding to 100% funding in approximately 10 years. And the reason this is significant is that over the next 15 to 20 years, potential headwinds to funding for the system could have a more significant negative impact than they would if they happened in years 20 through 30. I'm going to talk a little bit about what those headwinds and risks are to the system on my next slide. There are 4 key risks that our actuary has identified to COAERS long-term sustainability and funding. The first is lower than expected long-term investment performance. That is, over the next 20 to 30 years, not meeting the actuarial assumed rate of return of 7%. That would lead to a longer funding period than we're anticipating right now, but the extension of that funding period would not be to a point where the system is unsustainable in the long term. Another risk is a reduction in contributions that would extend the funding period. As I noted earlier, the city has made a significant effort by putting additional funding in beginning in January of 1%. And that had a significant impact in reducing the amortization period. But any future reduction in contributions would extend our funding period. Another headwind for the system would be a large market drawdown in the next 5 to 10 years. Something similar to the global financial crisis or the dot-com bubble in the next 5 to 10 years would be very serious for the system. As we are currently funded at 65%, a drawdown until we get to that 80% funded would have negative implications for the long-term sustainability of the system. And lastly, a significant reduction in the active population. This could be through privatization or reduction in the workforce. Any of these 4 risks would present headwinds to the long-term sustainability of the system. Because of this, I'm going to talk a little bit about the work the board and the city have been doing over the last couple of years to ensure the long-term sustainability and viability of the COAERS system. Before I get into that, I would like to note that the system is not at risk in any way of being unable to make our benefit payments. We have significant assets and can continue to pay benefits well into the future. That said, the board has been very proactive, as has our work with the city, in trying to get ahead of these issues so that they don't become serious and do jeopardize our ability to meet our long-term obligations. Recently, the board and the city have engaged in sustainability work that the city's undertaken through its retirement study, and an agreement between the city and the board on a sustainability plan targeting work at the next legislative session. Before I get into that, I want to just outline the defined benefit funding plan and explain what the challenges are for the system long term. On the next slide is a formula that many of our members have probably seen presented before, but it shows that in the long run, for plan sustainability, the contributions and investment income of the system have to balance out with the benefits and expenses. Over the last several years, one of the biggest challenges, and will be talked about during our investment program presentation, has been that investment returns have been markedly lower over the last 20 years than we anticipated during the 1990s. That has led to challenges in making sure that we balance out with our benefit and expense costs. We'll also talk about the reduction in investment expenses that we've experienced over the last 5 years. But what we're seeking to achieve in our long-term sustainability work is a balance here in this funding formula. Moving on to my next slide, I wanted to remind everybody of the work that the board and the city have done over the last 18 months. Early in 2020, as the city engaged in its retirement study work, the board adopted a funding framework as recommendations for the city to consider during its retirement study. That framework included consideration of a more flexible contribution policy to manage the risks of the system and pay down the unfunded accrued liabilities and normal costs over an appropriate period of time. And to the extent necessary, consider amendments to benefit policies to ensure that the system's obligations can be met for all generations of COAERS members. And lastly, to utilize appropriate risk sharing between the city and employees to manage the risks inherent in funding a defined benefit plan. Last fall, in our work with the city, the board unanimously adopted what I'm calling a sustainability plan targeting the 88th legislative session beginning in January of 2023 as the goal for the development of comprehensive pension reform legislation. As part of that agreement, the city sought to increase its contribution leading up to that to bring short-term relief to COAERS, with a contingency that the city and COAERS would continue to engage in productive, meaningful, and collaborative efforts to develop long-term solutions encompassing possible reforms to contribution, benefit, and governance policies. I'm happy to report that the board and the city will begin those conversations in advance of January 23 next month. We look forward to our continued partnership with the city of Austin, which has been so positive over all these years. And Mr. Chair, that concludes my presentation on the funding update and plan sustainability, and I will turn it back to you.
Thank you, Chris. Do you have any additional legislative actions that may be in store for COAERS, or what our members could expect in the future, or perhaps why we're here again?
Yes, that's an excellent question. I'll start with the latter part of that question first. We are here again because our current funded position, as I mentioned before, we're not in a crisis, and we have ability to continue to meet our benefit obligations. Currently, there's no sustainability issue that would threaten that. However, with a 32-year amortization period, we are outside the recommended range by the Pension Review Board and by organizations such as GFOA, and outside the board's adopted funding policy. To ensure that we can manage these risks that I discussed, the board has been working with the city for multiple years now to find a framework that works well for the city and ensures the long-term sustainability of the system. We do expect that there will be legislation, and we are looking at the 88th legislative session beginning in January of 2023 as the target to bring that legislation. That work will begin next month with the city. We are looking forward to that and our partnership with them to develop solutions that help them and ensure the long-term sustainability of the system.
Thank you, sir. And now I think we're going to move on to our investment portion of the meeting. To present to you will be by Mr. David Stafford, our Interim Chief Investment Officer. Mr. Stafford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's my pleasure to be able to present to everybody today about the state of the investment program at COAERS. And I'll start off on my next slide with a quick introduction of myself and the rest of the investment team. Again, my name is David Stafford. I get to serve as the Interim Chief Investment Officer of the COAERS Investment Program. And on the next slide, we can see my two colleagues, Ty Sorrell and Kelly Doggett, who assist with implementation and analytics in the portfolio as well. A few fun facts about me. I've been with the system for more than 3 years and have had some significant experience in some key initiatives, including rolling out an investment risk framework and some of our initiatives related to improving investment manager selection as well. I have over a decade of experience in investment and financial services and deep experience in portfolio construction and asset allocation. I'm born and raised here in Austin, so I am a local, and I say that for no reason other than to say that I have a strong personal connection with the vision and mission of COAERS and the system to provide reliable retirement benefits, and I consider it an honor to be able to sit in this seat and do the type of work that I get to do. Additionally, I've got 2 small kids and a wife that eat up a lot of my time outside of work. And I think that the most important thing that I'd say on this slide is for both myself and my 2 colleagues in the investment program is that we are also members of the system. So while we are working to manage the investment program, not only are we working to provide retirement benefits to all of our members, but we're there shoulder to shoulder with you all as well in managing our own retirement benefits. So that creates a strong alignment of interest where we're very bought into the success of the program and maintaining a reliable investment program over time. On the next slide, we can see the way that the investment staff reports up and what our role is in the management of the investments of the system. So the Board of the Trustees at top there have an investment committee who we report up through as well. Who hold and administer and manage the assets of the system. They set key policy and strategy for the way that the investment program should be structured over time. And we as investment staff are there to provide consultative advice, assistance, and implementation of board initiatives. We also work alongside an investment consultant, RVK, who provides a third-party advice, perspective, and resources to the trustees as well in making those recommendations up through the investment committee to the Board of Trustees. On the next slide, we can see what the fund looks like as of year-end 2020. So you can see that fund assets are nearly $3.2 billion as of year-end, and the fund remains highly diversified, both across asset classes and within them. So the fund has broad-based exposures to stocks, bonds, real assets, and multi-asset strategies and cash. We have broad exposure across geographies, individual stocks and bonds, and property types, such that the portfolio remains highly diversified for providing investment returns to the system that should help grow the portfolio over time. So how are we doing in the investment program? We feel like we've had strong investment performance over time. You can see here that over the last 10 years, net of investment fee returns are 7.7%, which are over the assumed rate of return for the system. Additionally, 2020 represented an interesting year in the investing world as there was a significant sell-off during COVID and then a really significant rebound after that. So fund returns for the year end of 2020 were at 10.8% net of fees. We feel like that's a really strong return for the investment program, both in the short and long term. Additionally, we're keenly aware of the costs associated with running an investment program and do our best to keep those low. Benchmarking data suggests if we took the COAERS asset allocation and handed the investment program over to one of our peers, that the cost of them running the program would be significantly higher, to the tune of a 25% reduction in fees through the COAERS investment staff and the strategy that the Board of Trustees and Investment Committee have laid out. Finally, those strong returns represent a healthy risk premium for investing the cash or investing the assets of the system. So certainly one could say, why don't you just leave the investments or the assets of the system in cash and earn, you know, whatever your bank could pay you on that. But by investing those assets, a healthy premium above cash rates has been earned, which on average has been 5% over time. And as we'll discuss a bit later on, has actually been even larger in the past few years. On the next slide, we can see the reason why investing the assets of the system is important. So as you can see here, the strong investment returns generated by the investment program and the investment of these assets has represented more than half of the contributions into the system over time. So the success of the investment program has accounted for such a large portion of your benefits over time being paid from long-term investment returns. So having the investment program structured in a highly principled way, in a very successful way, is a really, really important piece to the equation that Chris showed in his presentation, balancing contributions with benefits. Additionally, probably the most important decision that determines the long-term returns of the system are the mix of assets that, and the asset allocation of the fund. So you can see here that 80 to 90% of investment returns are generally determined by asset allocation decisions. So what's the right mix between owning stocks and bonds, and which type of stocks and bonds should the system be investing in and having exposure to over time? So in our pursuit of having a strong best-in-class investment program, in order to be able to generate such a substantial portion of the contributions into the system over time, we've developed what we call internally the Austin model for investment management. And on this slide, we've highlighted some of the key tenets of this model of investment management that I think are really differentiating and set us up for a lot of success in the future. So first, I'd say that I'd point to the data-driven point. So we really look at the data and what the data are telling us are successful ways for investing or for structuring the investment program. And we seek to remove a lot of the emotional decision-making that can be tempting when investing. Similarly, we have a preference for simplicity over complexity. There are lots of data points that you can look at as you're investing, and it can be difficult to figure out what the true direction of what the data are trying to tell you. So we found that typically the simpler answer that's easier to explain generally tends to provide more robust results over time. And finally, I'd point to the last bullet point there and note the really strong ethics policy that the board has chosen to adopt that does not allow staff to take any gifts or meals from possible vendors or investment managers. And what this strong ethics policy does keeps us highly principled and objective in our decision making and removes a lot of the conflicts of interest that may be present otherwise. So we have a really strong alignment with ensuring that we're making the best decisions for the system over time. And the policies really suggest that and put us in a best-in-class position to be able to make objective decisions in the investment program. On the next slide, you can see that this approach has led to excellent cost control, as I noted earlier in my presentation. You can see here the investment management fees on a trailing 4-quarter basis over time have dropped by nearly 50% over time. And this is a result of highly principled decision-making, strong negotiations with investment managers. And I think the key point here is yes, it's great to have lowered fees and expenses to the investment program over time, but the investment team was really focused on the value that's being added for any costs that are incurred by the system over time. So the goal is not to lower fees to zero, but instead to ensure that any costs that are incurred by the investment program and by the system over time are well spent. So there are areas like in US stocks where the data suggests that there's not a high likelihood of success for active management in those spaces. And passive index exposure can be a highly appropriate way to get exposure to those stocks and save costs at the same time. And so this leads us to the next slide, where we'll discuss what those returns over cash rates have been. So as a result of the highly principled approach to investment management, the keen focus on controlling costs and ensuring that there's value for any fees that are paid by the program, we can see here the healthy return premiums that have been earned by cash, or by the investment program over cash over time. In this chart, the blue line represents the interest rate on treasury bills, which could be considered the risk-free rate and are pretty similar to what you could earn in a bank account. And as you can see, and as Chris noted in his presentation, those rates were very high in the 90s, where you could earn 5–6% on your cash rates. But over time, those rates have come down as the Fed has lowered interest rates. But the premium that you've earned above those cash rates have been healthy over time. So the longer term average here is about 5% over cash rates. But recently, I would note that it's been even larger than that, where the fund has been able to earn 7 and 8% over cash rates to make up for the lower cash rates over time. So overall, this has resulted in healthy returns for bearing investment risk in the investment program, and suggests that the highly principled approach that we're taking has led to good results in the investment program. Lastly, we note some of the key future initiatives of the investment program. And then investing in life in general, I'd say if there's a preference to be forward-looking as opposed to backwards-looking. So some of our key initiatives involve understanding what the new normal is. So just as many of our work arrangements have changed over the past year and a half or so, so too has some of the investing landscape, in terms of understanding what the best type of bonds are to help diversify our portfolio. Geopolitics and central bank policy has become an increasingly important part of the investing landscape, and ensuring that we have a keen understanding of those issues is very important as we look forward. Similarly, we want to protect against emerging risks in investing. We've heard of many of the high-flying tech stocks that have done very well recently, and those names have been building up in index concentration over time. Some of the policy changes have made quite a bit of money printing, so there's fears of inflation in the market. And then finally, we want to improve on our existing processes. So as I mentioned earlier in the presentation here, asset allocation is the most important decision that an investment program makes in terms of determining the long-term rates of return. So ensuring that our asset allocation remains highly diversifying, and that the correct assets and types of strategies are included in that asset allocation. Additionally, adding new managers to our manager roster where appropriate over time, to ensure that we have strongly aligned partners to help us implement any changes in the portfolio. So that concludes my presentation on the investment program, and Mr. Nowak, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, David, for providing our members with an update about the investment program. Now, Chris and Russell will talk about operational matters and initiatives that are taking place at COAERS.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this presentation will focus on what's going on with COAERS business operations, as well as initiatives that are ongoing. To begin, I wanted to talk a little bit that our business operations at COAERS continue to be remote. As we decided last year at the beginning of the pandemic, the best way to ensure safety of our staff, our board, and our members, as well as to meet the mission of COAERS, was to work remotely. We've been very successful in carrying out our mission during this time, and we continue to focus on everybody's well-being and ensuring that we can manage that and ensure that our mission is being met. To date, we continue to believe remote operations is the most efficient and safest way for us to do that. We are looking at, though, developing plans for a possible 2021 on-site return. If I'd made this presentation about a month ago, I would probably be a little bit more optimistic about that timeline and when that would be. We continue to monitor local information provided by the City of Austin Health Department and Travis County. As you are all probably aware, we have recently moved back to stage 4, and we continue to abide by the recommendations of our local health officials to ensure that we can keep everybody safe and healthy and continue to meet our mission-critical operations. That said, we will continue to evolve our plans with the hope that at some point in 2021, in some fashion, COAERS operations hopefully can return to some type of on-site business operation. We're also going to be reviewing the ability for COAERS staff to offer in-person appointments later in 2021. Again, the recent developments in moving back to stage 4 have forced us to look at when that timeline will be to make sure that we are meeting our mission and keeping everybody safe. But that is something that the COAERS management team is in ongoing weekly discussions about. We'll continue to follow the advice of our local health officials and monitor both state and federal recommendations as well. We need to make sure that our operations can be agile and adapt to these ever-changing landscapes, again, because our focus is on ensuring the well-being of our staff, our board, and our members, and fulfilling COAERS' mission of providing you your reliable retirement benefits. On the next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about ongoing initiatives at COAERS. COAERS' ongoing initiatives include Member Direct, and at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Russell Nash to talk a bit about what Member Direct will bring to the COAERS membership. Russell?
Thanks, Chris. We wanted to give everybody in our audience an update on our latest customer tool. It's called Member Direct, as Chris mentioned. Member Direct was launched in October of last year, and essentially it provides COAERS members the ability to get COAERS benefit information anytime, anywhere. Currently, about 20% of our members, next slide, have decided to register for Member Direct and are using it, and many are joining us every day. So we're very excited about our active and retired members utilizing this new tool. Now, for anyone who hasn't registered, let me take a moment to ask you to consider registering for Member Direct. When you have a few spare moments, maybe about 15 minutes of uninterrupted time, gather a few things like your driver's license, a cell phone that can receive a text message, and work out your username and password ahead of time. Just a note, make sure your password is complex. That will be of benefit to all of us. And when you get some free time, maybe about 15 minutes, go to our website, www.coaers.org, and simply click on the Member Direct registration button and follow the prompts to register for Member Direct. We will always look to improve this tool as we go through time. In fact, for the first quarter of 2021, what we have in mind is to add additional ways that you can log into Member Direct without having to receive an SMS text. Again, you can just use your cell phone and download 2 Authenticator apps called Microsoft Authenticator and Google Authenticator. And they'll be in the App Store, and they're available for Android and Apple phones. So we'll continue to increase Member Direct's capacity and the tools for our members. Let's take a look at the next slide. On this screen, we have one of many options for active members. This gives you a feel for Member Direct. Active members can review their contribution and interest balances over time. They can see who's named as their beneficiary. And I also want to highlight the ability to provide yourself a benefit estimate. This is a remarkable planning tool for anyone who hasn't dug into what their future monthly retirement benefit would be from COAERS. I encourage you to do this. There's no limit on the amount of estimates you can prepare. You can run estimates on different retirement dates. You can add in service purchases to see how that increases your benefit. You can change your insurance options. You can change your tax deductions, just so you can figure out what your net retirement benefit is going to be and when you'll be able to be eligible to receive it. So if you haven't done that, I strongly encourage you to run a benefit estimate or 2 or 3. You can also estimate several types of purchases in Member Direct. You can declare proportionate service if you've worked for the state of Texas or maybe a school district or another system that participates in our proportionate program. You can actually declare that service right in Member Direct. You can sign up for seminars. You can even use this tool in concert and in conjunction with an actual live person from COAERS. You can call and make an appointment to meet either virtually or on the telephone with our member services specialist. You can log into Member Direct and you can literally go through the process of retirement right there, submitting your documents as you go electronically. This will save you the trouble of mailing in your documents or bringing those documents to our office. So those are just a few of the features for active members. And so let's take a look at one more slide for retirees. Retirees can also benefit from Member Direct. Most notably, retirees don't have to wait on the U.S. Postal Service every year to receive their 1099-R tax document. Our staff will place your 1099-R document right into Member Direct in January, late January of every year. And so instead of waiting for the mail, you just log in, print out your tax document, and start your tax return. Retirees can also change their tax withholding on Member Direct. They can also review their beneficiaries for the $10,000 COAERS benefit on Member Direct as well. And if you're a retiree who's come back to work for the city, you can track your hours against that 1508 hourly limit in Member Direct. So in conclusion, we're really happy that Member Direct is providing valuable services to retirees and active members, and we're glad that you find it useful. And as always, I want everybody listening tonight to know that we have a very capable and compassionate staff that's ready to help you at any time. So feel free to call us, 512-458-2551 if you need anything from us. So that's my presentation, and back to you, Chris.
Thank you, Russell.
Thank you, Russell.
Sorry, go ahead, Mr. Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to continue the presentation talking a little bit about additional initiatives that we have going on at COAERS. The first is the continued development of our member education resources. We have been developing educational videos that we post on our YouTube page. We are trying to reestablish that initiative. It took a little bit of a pause during the COVID pandemic initially, but we are working on additional educational resources, as well as putting more information on the COAERS website that our membership will find helpful in thinking about their retirement planning. We're also trying to amplify our communications through our communication tools such as social media. This is our second consecutive year of hosting our annual member meeting on Facebook, and we found that the attendance has been significantly higher than we did this in person. We're going to continue to find ways to make sure that there is information and communication available to our membership on a more rapid basis than our quarterly newsletter. We continue to put that out, but we'd like to make sure that our membership can reach out to us and can hear from us more frequently. We're also re-engaging in our department level presentations. We did have to take a pause on those as we started through the pandemic last year, but in working with the city and its several departments, COAERS staff are back and involved at department level presentations. We have had information presented at several departments this year and have more scheduled. If you have questions or would like to get your department involved, please reach out to the COAERS staff and we will do everything we can to get your department scheduled as soon as possible. Additionally, COAERS and the board have been working on elevating retirement system best practices, including a recent governance assessment effectiveness report and implementation of recommendations from a governance consultant. We've also adopted a risk management program and have recently completed and will be reporting to the board a benefits administration benchmarking report that compares our benefits administration to many of our peers across the United States and the whole world. And lastly, a new initiative that's been undertaken this year is a redesign of the COAERS website and the COAERS logo. This began last year, and the board supported moving in a direction of improving the website and its capabilities by moving to a new content management system. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about this initiative specifically in the next slide. So as we began the website redesign, there was some discussion about whether it was time to look at rebranding and redesigning the COAERS logo. In discussions with the board with its support, we did move forward with that project. The logo redesign was based on three key concepts. We wanted to ensure it encompassed the foundational promise of COAERS to reflect the values of trust, reliability, stability, and sustainability. Additionally, we wanted it to reflect the idea of innovation, to embody the city of Austin, which is a city on the move with progress, and create excitement about the future of COAERS. And lastly, we wanted a clean and modern design to create an aesthetic that is simple and timeless. With those concepts and working with a graphic designer, we proposed a new logo to the board, which the board adopted in support of the new website redesign. And on the next slide, we'll show that to you right now. So you can see the prior current logo and then the new logo that we will be rolling out later this year. We're really excited about the new logo and the launch of the new COAERS website. We're expecting this to be complete in October of this year. So when you log on to our website in October, it's going to look a little bit different. We hope you're going to find it a bit user-friendly and easier to locate critical information to our membership. We recognize that the website is one of the primary ways you as our members interact with us at COAERS, and we want to ensure that we're maintaining best practices in how we utilize our website and deliver services to our members. And that concludes my presentation component on initiatives at COAERS. Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you, Russell. Now, we'll move into the question and answer portion of our event. Over the past few weeks, COAERS has received great questions from our members. Thank you to everyone who sent in your questions. As a reminder, our audience members who are tuned in on Facebook can also type questions into the comment section of the Facebook Live video. And we'll do our best to get through the questions with the time we have remaining. So the first question, which is always the most popular question that we get every year from our members, is regarding the cost of living adjustments, COLAs. Many members have been faced with increasing costs, rent, housing, food, fuel, utilities. So, Chris, will there be a COLA in the upcoming years? Can members expect an increase?
Thank you for that question, Mr. Chair. First, I would like to just note that we are aware, I think everybody here is, of the rising costs that we're all facing. When you go to the grocery store, you go to get gas, everything has become more expensive. And so we do want to recognize that challenge for everybody. With that said, I'd like to make 2 points. The first is that a cost of living adjustment, or a COLA, is not a pre-funded component of the defined benefit program. What that means is there is not funding set aside that COAERS receives to pay for a COLA. And that means that a COLA can only be paid on an ad hoc basis, and only if we have money available. And so secondarily, to determine if we have money available, the board and the city agreed to, during our last pension reform effort, a new process for the approval of any COLA. The first step of that process is that COAERS actuary has to make a recommendation that the system is in a actuarial and financial position to be able to afford a COLA. If the COAERS actuary makes that recommendation, secondarily, it would go to a vote of the COAERS board. The process then continues and moves over to the city. The third step of that process is that COLA would also have to be recommended by the city manager. And then last step of that process is it would have to be approved by the Austin City Council. As of last year, when the last time we received a recommendation from COAERS actuary was that the system was not in a position to grant a COLA. And therefore, the board was not in a position to vote on that because we did not get through the first step of that process. The COAERS actuary is required by statute to annually make a recommendation based on actuarial principles of whether or not the system is in a position to grant a COLA. That will be presented to the board later this year, but based on our current funded status and our amortization period, and knowing the actuarial standards of practice, I would say it's probably unlikely that the COAERS actuary will make that recommendation for this year. We cannot speak to future years because we don't know what funded position we'll be in. But for this year, given that we're at 32-year amortization period and at a 65.3% funded ratio, I would say it's unlikely that COAERS actuary will be making that recommendation to the board.
Thank you, sir. Also, there's been a couple of questions on health insurance. So the first question, can you share any updates on retiree health insurance? Will there be any changes? And Russell, can you talk a little bit about this, please?
I sure can. Thanks, Mr. Chair. A few things. First of all, COAERS does not handle health insurance for retirees, but we've reached out to our colleagues at the city and have some information to share on behalf of them tonight. First, the city has developed and mailed a proposed pay and benefits flyer to retirees. So that's been mailed out. But if you haven't had a chance to look at that or it hasn't come in the mail, we have actually posted it on the COAERS website as well at www.coaers.org. That's www.coaers.org. And we posted it as the first item under the news link. So take a look at our website if you haven't seen the proposed pay and benefits flyer. Then it's important to know that those benefits are proposed. They won't be final until the city council approves the budget. Next, there's very positive news on the medical plan, the retiree health insurance plan. There will be no premium rate increases for 2022. That's super positive news, and we're very glad for that. Thanks to Councilmember Poole, City Finance team, and City HR teams for that. There will be some changes in the plans, again, that will be outlined in that proposed benefits flyer. As for coverage, the medical plan does have a few changes that you'll want to take a look at in the proposed benefits flyer. There's also a new vision plan vendor and a slight decrease in the retiree vision insurance rates for next year. So that's good news as well. And finally, the retiree dental plan is still being offered, and there will be no changes in the monthly premiums or the coverage there as well. So again, if you haven't had a chance to take a look at the proposed pay and benefits flyer from the city, you can check it out on our website after the meeting at www.coaers.org. Again, it's the first item right under our news link. So back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Russell. Regarding the City of Austin supplemental health insurance, one member wrote, previously, with United Healthcare, hearing aids were a part of covered expenses. Since we are now with Blue Cross Blue Shield Texas, hearing aids are no longer covered. In the next round of insurance coverage, could we regain the coverage for hearing aids? Russell, can you tell us a little bit about hearing aid coverage?
I can. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd be happy to clarify this. Hearing aids are covered under the HMO plan currently, but they're not covered under the PPO or consumer-driven healthcare plans. So again, be on the lookout for open enrollment materials this fall. Ask questions, understand the differences between the plan coverages. Just a note, open enrollment is tentatively scheduled for October the 11th through about November the 14th. And the city will have opportunities for you to look at the enrollment materials, the plan coverage, and also participate in presentations. So that will be on the city's website. And of course, if you have any questions, you can also call us at COAERS. We have a very good relationship with the city HRD people, and we can get you to the right folks. So we want to make sure our audience knows that hearing aids are covered under the HMO plan, but be looking for the open enrollment materials for next year to really study the coverage going forward in 2022. Back to you.
Thank you. We've also received several questions on plan benefits. And here's one of the questions that one of the members wanted to know. Do retirees have the ability to carry on and or purchase life insurance on their existing plan as an added retirement benefit? COBRA is extremely expensive. Russell, can you tell us a little bit about that?
I sure can. The city does provide $1,000 of retiree life insurance for each retiree at no cost to the retiree. Also, folks in our audience might want to remember that COAERS itself provides an additional $10,000 death benefits for each retiree. So $1,000 of life insurance with the city, $10,000 with COAERS for retirees. Now, I talked to the benefits office and they have addressed the supplemental insurance aspect of it. a few times in recent history. In fact, just recently they went out to bid for life insurance. They asked the marketplace for quotes on supplemental life insurance. And unfortunately, the cost was just extremely high, as well as there's a high level of guarantee that carriers want for enrollment. So it just is not that feasible for a group benefit. So I know that the city continues to research this area and try to do their due diligence, but the marketplace as of yet hasn't produced many feasible options. So back to you.
Thank you, sir. And there's another question related. What do people mean when they say vested after 5 years? The member goes on, does that mean you'll receive retirement benefits upon retirement? Can you expand upon that, Russell?
Yeah, sure can. The vesting means that you have achieved enough COAERS service that upon your termination, you basically have a legal right to a future monthly lifetime retirement benefit when you meet those eligibility requirements based upon the salary and service credit that you accrued during your career. So that's why we say vesting, because your legal rights are becoming permanent and allow you to be eligible to receive in the future that highly prized and important benefits promise, the lifetime monthly benefit. So for example, if you're a Group B member and you have 5 years of service, but then you quit city employment and move on to another employer, if you keep your contributions on deposit with COAERS, you're eligible to draw a lifetime monthly benefit at age 65 based upon the service and salary that you had accrued while you were a city employee. It's also important to remember that there are other benefits with vesting. Remember, your monthly benefit also comes with medical, dental, vision, and life insurance, just like we talked about a minute ago, and also the death benefit through COAERS. So vesting is a really important legal protection that we all benefit from as COAERS members. Back to you.
There's one last question on plan benefits. Has there been any thought to allowing members the opportunity to convert sick time once they reach eligibility, even if they leave the city, but don't immediately start drawing their annuity? Can you expand upon that or discuss that, Russell?
I sure can. Our statute governs this provision, and the statute narrowly tailors eligibility to only those people who are active contributory members. However, we'll keep this suggestion and consider it should we be in a position to revise our statutes, for example, with the 2023 legislative session. Back to you.
Thank you, sir. We have another question from a member. I have witnessed a great loss of talented young people from our roles since the retirement eligibility requirement increased to 30 years, which keeps our organization struggling to find new talent and is a disservice to our community. Is there any possible way we can put it up for a vote to reinvest in our workforce and lower the 30-year requirement, even to 27 years? Chris, can you discuss this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess let me first start by discussing a little bit about the retirement eligibility component of that question. While Group B does have one provision for a 30-year requirement to retire, that's just one of three options. If you're in Group B, you can retire with 30 years at age 62. However, if you have less than 30 years of service, but as discussed in the previous question about vesting, if you have more than 5 years, but less than 30, you can still draw a lifetime benefit at age 65. Lastly, Group B members can retire at age 55 with 10 years of service with a actuarially reduced benefit. So there are three different age requirements that could be satisfied for Group B members and they don't all become 30 years. I think another important part of that question involves workforce management, and that's really within the province of the city. As we continue to work with the city in our partnership in developing legislation for next session, that's something that we will look to the city for what they think is best for managing their workforce. The responsibility of COAERS is ensuring proper management of the trust, Workforce management typically falls with a plan sponsor, and we want to make sure that we continue to work with them so the city is developing benefits that best suit their employees and suit the needs identified potentially with that question. And then lastly, as far as a vote, COAERS statute only allows for a vote on contributions. So there isn't really a provision for the membership to hold a vote around retirement eligibility. But obviously with that note, and obviously will be a part of a discussion with the city, what they think retirement benefits need to be as we move forward for the workforce at the city. So we'll continue to partner with the city on that one, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. There's a few more questions that range in topic, which I'll pitch over to Chris and Russell to answer. So let's see, Chris, will the legislature's special session bill regarding the 13th check, that's in quotes, have any impact on COAERS?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There is no impact on COAERS. With the 13th check legislation is focused on the Teachers Retirement System of Texas. That's the only system that is included in that 13th check legislation. And so that won't have any impact on COAERS. And I'd like to just note that there's no other bills that have been filed during the special session or even during the regular session that directly impacted COAERS.
So you kind of touched on this next question, Chris. Any proposed state laws in the pipeline or laws already passed that will help COAERS? And then there is, I would like to see a small percentage of the state lottery funds to go into local government retirement systems. Thank
you. That's a great question. Unfortunately, there's nothing specifically at the state level that would be designed to create a dedicated revenue source for any local retirement system. The Texas State Constitution makes clear that the funding responsibility for local retirement systems is a responsibility of the local plan sponsor and the retirement system. And there have been AG opinions issued that the state has no responsibility for that. Therefore, while there's been no legislation along those lines, I would not expect there to be any legislation passed that would do that. And I would also note in my years working at the state that funding from the lottery proceeds is usually difficult to move beyond where it's already headed to. So while that would be great for everybody involved, I don't anticipate any legislation along those lines.
Okay, thank you. Also, there's a question. Is the City of Austin's credit rating the same as it has been? It's always been the highest rate. Excellent. Can you talk a little bit about the city's credit rating?
Thank you. That I think is probably a more appropriate question for folks at the city. But I can note the city's credit rating is outstanding. They continue to be at the top end of the credit rating due to their excellent financial management and the great work over at the City Hall. But again, I think that's something that the city's folks would probably be better to speak to. That's not something that directly impacts COAERS. We're not part of that decision-making process or involved in those conversations. So, but we do know that the credit rating at the city is outstanding.
Good. And Chris, there's one other question here. Let's see. Will members be involved in discussions related to any future changes?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's an excellent question. As I mentioned in my earlier presentation, we're beginning discussions with the city next month as we start to target the 88th legislative session beginning in January 2023. One of the items we want to discuss with the city is how and when together we'd like to engage our membership and our stakeholder groups. That's not something that's been specifically decided and agreed upon, but that is on the list of items that are going to be talked about when we partner with the city beginning next month. So there will be information. We will communicate that to our membership through our website, through our newsletter, and our social media outlets. So please keep an eye out for that, and we'll make sure as soon as we have additional information, we put that out there for our membership.
Thank you, Chris. Russell, one member is asking a question regarding Empower Retirement, which is the 457 deferred compensation plan offered by the City of Austin. Can more fixed income fund options be offered? I would like to see a better balance of investment options. Equities are not suitable for some retirees.
Yeah, I can take this one. The Deferred Compensation Committee oversees the investments in the administration of that plan. It's not COAERS. But I've relayed this comment to the chair of that committee, and he's relayed some information that I can share tonight. First, the committee is always evaluating the performance of their funds and whether or not they're meeting the needs of participants. Secondly, there is a bond fund and a stable value fund in the current lineup. Then if participants want additional options, they can access a self-directed brokerage account where additional investment options are available, including fixed income and bond options. There is a fee for the self-directed brokerage account. But then again, we have forwarded these comments onto the committee's chair, and we always encourage you to reach out to that plan. Their link is on our website under our helpful links page. Or you can call them at 866-613-6189. That's 866-613-6189. Back to you.
Thank you, Russell. Here's another. After retiring, we moved out of the city of Austin, and I would love to have my Austin Public Library card as a benefit. My local library in East Texas is very limited, and the Austin Public Library is fantastic. Russell, do you have any feedback for this member?
Yes, retirees often want to keep the benefits of being Austin residents, even if they move out of Austin. And so we have forwarded this comment onto the city's HR department, and they've relayed back to me that this is not an option currently. However, the library system does allow for library services to non-residents for a fee. And the library system's website also discusses TextShare, TEXSHARE. It's a card that may also provide other options to non-residents who want services at the Austin Library.
Thank you, Russell. We still have a little bit more time, another 5-10 more minutes for more questions. Those are the ones that I can see. And I would look to staff. Has we received any further questions than the ones that I've been presented?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we did receive a question on our Facebook feed about the last time a COLA was granted, and I'd be happy to answer that question. The last COLA that the system was able to grant on an ad hoc basis was in 2002.
Thank you, sir. Any further questions from our members?
I believe that's the only one we received so far in the feed. We're checking right now.
Okay.
I'm not seeing any additional questions, Mr. Chairman.
Very good, sir. While you all are checking, I guess this will conclude the Q&A segment. Thank you again to all our members who submitted your thoughtful questions. Any questions that we're not able to address or that you can think of later, we'll do our best to answer them in the event summary section. Again, a recording of tonight's event will be made available on the COAERS website, that's coaers.org, and COAERS social media channels for anyone who missed it. So at this time, I'd like all trustees to join me on screen if you can. And if you're interested in sharing any closing comments or thoughts about today's program or discussion, please go ahead and make note of that in the chat box. And we'll go ahead and turn that over. While they're doing that, I would like to thank staff for preparing for tonight's meeting and for helping me learn my material here this evening also. Do I have any of my fellow trustees that would like to make any comments? Councilmember Poole, I know you always have something to add.
Oh, well, thanks, Chair Noak. On behalf of District 7 and my colleagues on my trustee colleagues with COAERS, I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. I think that the presentation was really informative. A lot of really good questions came in the Q&A section, and good information was offered by our esteemed staff. It's a real honor and privilege to represent you all on this board and to do this work on your behalf. And I thank you all for all of the diligence and the good mental strength that everybody has brought to their work over the last 18 months. And certainly since we met last year at our annual meeting, it has not been an easy time for all of us, but I'm really grateful to know that you all are all still out there, that our jobs are secure at the City of Austin, and that we continue to improve and advance the good programs that everybody relies upon with the city. So thanks to y'all for being with us here this evening. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Councilmember Poole. Mr. Spencer, I noticed that you would like to have a comment or say a comment.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as the board appointed citizen representative, I believe I have somewhat of an objective view of the COAERS organization. I take very seriously my role as advocate for you. And I just wanted you to know that from my perspective, the paid staff at COAERS are incredibly skillful, they're conscientious, and they work extremely hard. It's impressive to watch them in motion at each of the chances that I get to do that. Chris Hanson, the executive director, is a strong leader and does a great job helping the team stay focused on the right issues. The board members are also impressive in their commitment to advocate for you and to make this fund as successful as possible. So I hope that's helpful to you and helps you feel more confident in this system. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. And I noticed that Mr. Anthony Ross Sr. has a comment.
Yes.
You're muted, sir.
I just wanted to say, for retired and active members, I want you to rest assured that your retirement benefits are secure. Trustees and admin, system admin work to make sure that the pensions will be there. We look far into the future. And I want to say that as a retiree member of the board, like you active workers, you active members, we have skin in the game. We don't get compensated, but we have this fiduciary responsibility to make sure we do things in the interest of the beneficiaries. And so I just wanted to assure you that we're working hard. We have good staff and we have very competent board members. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that very much. I noticed, Frank, you turned your mute off. Do you have a comment that you'd like to share? Any closing remarks? Mr. Merriman?
Yes, I just want to express my appreciation to City of Austin employees for all of the hard work and effort that you put into the city. I know your retirement benefits are a very important part of the benefits that you receive in exchange for your service. And we are certainly dedicated to trying to make those benefits as stable and as good as we possibly can. And the board has been working very hard, as you can tell from this meeting, to improve its public information so that you have as good of an understanding of the system and the benefits as we can give you. And we also find the meeting useful for getting information from you. It helps us to understand what your concerns are, and we will certainly try to keep those in mind as we move along. And as has been emphasized by others, this board staff is very able and willing and eager to answer any questions that you have that go beyond what we've been able to discuss tonight.
Thank you, Frank. Any other trustees? Ms. Yuzhao, I noticed you would like to make a comment. What would you like to add?
Yes, thank you, Chair. As one of the trustees representing active members, I just want to thank our City of Austin COAERS members for your trust in us. And I really take this opportunity to serve as the fiduciary of our retirement fund very seriously. The trustees on the board and staff at COAERS are working hard to find every opportunity to provide the best financial management and retirement service for our members. I want to wish everybody good health, and I hope you all can enjoy the rest of your summer. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Yuzhao. Do I have any other comments, Amy, or from Diana or Brad? You all are going to, okay, I respect that. But, oh, Brad, yes, sir.
I mean, as a newly elected active employee, I just can't reiterate enough how passionate and how expert our staff is and how caring the members are of this board. They care about every member, retiree or active. You're always in our thoughts, and we are here for you. So if you have questions about the system like tonight, it doesn't have to just be tonight. You can ask our expert staff or you can ask us, but it's truly an honor to serve on this board. We all take it very seriously, and we're always here if you have any other questions.
Very good, sir. Thank you very much. Well, I appreciate everybody's input as we close this evening's program through this unprecedented pandemic. And as we forge ahead onto a new normal, whatever that's going to look like, Austin has continued to exhibit extraordinary strength and resilience. We thank all of you all and our dedicated city workforce members, past and present, who have been so essential to our community's well-being. I would also like to share my sincere thanks and gratitude to my fellow trustees who continue to challenge me and each other, and the staff members whose dedicated work was instrumental to guiding us during this extraordinary time. We would like to reassure you that COAERS remains unwavering in its mission to deliver promised benefits and in its service to our members. Again, thank you everybody for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. Thank you and good night.